Thank you, Mr. Marsh. I appreciate those comments. And first of all, let me thank you for the invitation to be here. I've seen a lot of faces that I recognize through the years, and I really appreciate the reception and the welcome. And I am certainly open to coming and speaking at any time when there's lunch served. So I'm all in favor of that. I do want to just kind of give you a status update, if you will, of the police department, and just kind of share with you where we are right now currently. And before I do, though, as Ken said, I'm the new kid on the block. I'm the old kid, but I'm the new kid. I've been with the department 33 years next month, actually. And I'm just, when you get right down to the brass tacks, I'm an old street cop that's, the Lord Jesus has just shown me favor through the years, and I am where I am because of Him. I came from, Ken said, Bristol, and went through the Air Force, and was very fortunate that Kingsport was hiring during this time, and Chief Kiesling and at the time it was Deputy Chief Addington saw fit to bring me on, and so I've stayed here ever since. Kingsport's my home, and I love this place. I love this department, and we've got a lot of good men and women that are serving right now, and we're very fortunate. Who I am as a person: I'm a husband of 36 years. I'm a father of 3 daughters, thus no hair. And so they have all grown and gotten married and having lives of their own. I am a papaw of 6, and 7's on the way. So my time is occupied when I'm not here doing what this is. So I'm quite busy here of late. And the boys have started playing sports, so I spend a lot of time on the ball field. So if I'm not here, you'll probably find me on the ball field somewhere. I know enough about technology to be dangerous, so just bear with me. The police department, if you look at us totally, we have a total department, and counting civilian workers, records, jail, dispatchers, we have a department of 162 people. 120 of those are our sworn personnel, our police officers, if you will. Currently, and unfortunately, we have 14 vacancies, which is around 11.6% whole. If you look nationwide, that's about where most departments are right now. Some are a lot worse than that. But when you look at that number, you have to take a lot of other things into consideration. We currently have 8 in training, which we have 5 in our field training officer program, which they're riding with another officer, and then we have 3 in the academy. So when you look at holes, you have to look at these numbers as well. We also have 3 that are currently on family medical leave, because 60% of our department, as you'll see, close to 60% of our department is less than 10 years service. So they're young, they're having babies, they're growing their families, so a lot of them fall into this category. In addition to, we have a lot of military folks on our staff that are currently in reserves and National Guards and stuff like that, so they're serving our country as well. So when you look at 14 vacancies and you add all these up, 14, 8, and 3, so on any given day we're anywhere between 22 to 25 people that is not there. And that's about 20% of our workforce that is not helping us because they're not there, obviously. We're very fortunate to have 5 FBI National Academy graduates, which I humbly am a part of, and we also have 5 National Forensic Academy graduates, and the NA is a 10-week resident class in Quantico, Virginia. You're up there for 10 weeks, and I was in Northern Virginia from January to March, and that's Northern Virginia in January through March is not a warm place to be, shall I say. And the Forensic Academy graduates is, again, a resident class. It's held in Knoxville down at UT at the Boneyard, basically. Our length of service, like I said just a minute ago, 55% is from 1 to 10 years, so we've got a lot of babies. I can say that now that I'm an old head. And so But when you look inside that number, we've got babies coming on board 25, 26 years old, and the field training officers that they are being taught by have been there less than 10 years as well. So we've got babies training babies. So it takes a lot of watching over the decisions being made. So a lot of our time is spent reading reports to make sure that all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed. So there's a lot of administrative functions that go on within a young department. And when you look at us collectively, we are a very young department. 23% have been there less than 20, 18% less than 29, and some of us old heads that only make up about 4% that have been there for 30 years. As I said, we have 42 civilian positions, and one of the earmarks for this department, and I'll speak to this in just a minute, nationally accredited since 1992. I had been with the department for about 4 years roughly, and we were going through a accreditation process. We're nationally accredited. We just finished up our 9th accreditation in December. But what that does, it establishes standards for us to function as a department. In fact, we have to meet 372 mandatory standards and 75 non-mandatory standards that applies to a department our size. Now, I say that to say this. When a lot of the social issues that are currently residing in the police environment right now, and some of the Governor Lee's mandates that came down as far as what the police department should be doing or not doing, because of these standards, we were already doing them. We had already been doing them for years, for the chokeholds and stuff like that. Some departments were taking some heat over. We had already had standards that it pertained to for years. So our adjustment wasn't really that big. We just continued to do what we were doing because we were meeting these nationally accredited standards. And that is a huge jewel in our crown right now because there wasn't a lot of transitioning and a lot of panic, if you will, from our officers to think, oh, what are we going to do about this? What are we going to be doing about that? We were already doing it. So it was old hat to them. That it really wasn't a big issue at all. One of our biggest problems we're facing right now is recruitment and retention, obviously. And as I was talking with these gentlemen up at this table, it's not, back in early 2000, we started seeing a lot of our officers leave us for other agencies, federal, state level, stuff like that. And because they had the education that could carry their career on. What we're starting to see now is that officers are leaving our career field. In fact, just 2 weeks ago, we had one that left us to go work in wasteland management. So they just leaving the career field altogether. It's not about pay, it's not about retirement, it's about the job, which is very unfortunate because to me, to step back to think, what would I do if I wasn't doing this? I don't know that I could answer it. I really don't. I mean, because really all I know is police, military, and going through college, I worked at a funeral home, so which is a whole nother story. I mean, but I learned a lot, but had a lot of fun. But regardless, that's all I know. And so a lot of these youngsters that are coming in, the ones that are thinking 30 years down the road, I don't know that they exist. Because when I interview them for a job, when you ask them what are their long-term goals, they really don't have any. They're just looking at today. And that's unfortunate. And we try to steer them into thinking 5, 10, 15 down the road, but it's, they're not seeing the forest for the trees, really. And it's very unfortunate. And you can see from 2013 to 2020, our hires are in the blue and our departures are in the red. The red line trending is staying flat, so, and our hires are increasing a little bit, but it's still concerning. Our education and experience department-wise, we have about 60% that have some type of formal education, as you can see. 17% has associates, 40% have bachelors, 4% have masters, and almost 30% are military veterans. And some of those are still current. They're in National Guard and or Reserve, so they occasionally have to go serve their country, which we completely understand, and obviously I don't mind because I'm a veteran myself, so I appreciate their service. When you talk about our training, what does it take to be a police officer? It all begins with a basic academy, which is 12 weeks. Resident, typically we will send our recruits to Blunt Academy. We often send them sometimes to Walter State, depending on vacancies. And those academies account for 12 weeks, and once they come back, they're in the field training program, which means they're riding with someone for 16 weeks. So 28 weeks of a hiring process, they are with somebody before they go out and function on their own. So over half a year, it's what it takes to become a police officer. So when someone leaves us, it leaves a hole, because that time is money. Time is money. You're talking officers' investments, one-on-one training, and as you can see, just what all it entails. Now, annually, by post standards, Tennessee Police Officer Standardized Training, we have to meet a minimum of 40 hours training each year. In service is what we call it. Now, most officers, and I dare say vast majority of them, go to a lot more than 40 hours. So that is our goal. And that's what's kept this department in particular out of a lot of trouble, is because we focus on training. Practice becomes policy if you're not careful. And if you don't train correctly, then bad practice is going to become the department's policy. So we spend a lot of time and a lot of emphasis on the training aspect. 28 weeks is a long time, but in 28 weeks you can really tell what a person is made of, how he or she thinks, how she's going to react to something, or how he's going to react to something. So it's a very critical point in an officer's career, these first 28 weeks. It's very time consuming, but it's well worth it. And the field training program that we utilize, we have utilized it since I came on board. So it's a weeding process, and it works beautifully. It's 3 phases. Phase 1 is just kind of riding with the officer to kind of see what it all entails. And in the middle of the phase is the beefiest part. That's when you start doing hands-on. And the third and final phase is your solo, but you still have a partner with you. So that's where we really see what they are made of. Our applicant testing, and this begins spring of 2019. As you can see, spring of 2019 we had 126 applicants. This past summer, just recently, actually, we only had 68 applicants. And when I came on board in 1988, out of the Civic Auditorium, there was over 300 that showed up to take the test, to take the written test. And now we've got 68 showing up. So I don't have an answer, to be honest with you. I really don't have an answer. We had the job fair yesterday at the farmers market. Our training staff tells me that there were a lot of good candidates there. They pushed the recruiting issue, and a lot of them were interested in our agency, but they're scared of what they're seeing and hearing on the news. And I can't blame them, but at some point it's got to come internally. What do I want to do to make this a better place? Do I stick my head in the sand and go do something else, or do I stand up and stand in the gap and make a difference? And so those are the quality candidates we're looking for. The way we are structured internally, our organizational structure, and that's not a really great picture, so I apologize for that. But you got me at the top, you got the deputy chief directly under me, and then you have a commander who is directly under him. And what we were seeing past couple of years, well, we did this change back in 2013. And what we were seeing at the time, we had two deputy chiefs, one over the operations and one over administration. And sometimes, unfortunately, those positions aren't interchangeable. They're really not, because the left hand sometimes didn't know what the right hand was doing just because mere design. And so what we decided to do was realign it in the succession, in that if I'm doing something or I know something or I'm going to a meeting, the deputy chief is there as well, because he can fill in the gap immediately and be caught up knowledge-wise as well as the commander. We still have the administration and operations captains who oversee those two particular divisions, and the administrative side is our professional standards unit, our training unit, our CALIA, our accreditation, our corrections, our jail, our communications, our dispatch, 911, and the administrative lieutenant oversees records entirely. On the operations side is the patrol lieutenants, watch commanders, SWAT, EOD, the more visual people that you typically see. Our criminal investigations unit is broken down to 2 units. Our CID is our typical detectives, if you will, and then our vice and narcotics unit. And then our strategic operations unit consists of our crime analyst and our traffic and directed patrols and stuff like that. When we have a problem area, we'll go to this particular unit and say, okay, we need for you to designate some men and women to go take a look at this particular area. Our Uniform Patrol Division, as you can see for the last 3 or 4 years, and these are just some highlights on some collisions, disturbances, and alarms, which are very typical calls that we see daily. As you can see, they're pretty much staying flat. Here's the problem. Our call load is staying flat or relatively the same, but we're doing it with less people. So it means they're working harder, or so it seems to them, and they are. So when you do something at the same level, but at a lesser level personnel-wise, you're going to be working harder. So that draws on them physically, it draws on them mentally. So a lot of time, me and the deputy chief and the commander, we do a lot of cheerleading. We have to come into the locker room and give them a pep talk every now and then. We have recently started having one-on-one conversations with our officers. We'll call them into our office just to see how they're doing mentally and ask about their families and kind of engrossing them in this is a family. We are all family. We're all in this together. We're all in this fight together. It's not a us and they, it's we. And so we're trying to buy the younger generation into that, and hopefully they'll stay with us a little bit longer. Our CID, our Criminal Investigations Division, their clearance rate is phenomenal. As you can see, it stays the same. Now in 2020 it was kind of an anomaly in that their caseload wasn't high because of COVID, because there were some things that was obviously going on with there. But the clearance rate for them, they do a phenomenal job. They really do. If it comes across their desk, and they have solvability factors when a case comes from patrol to their desk. If there's certain solvability factors that they can navigate through, then they'll go forward with that case. And as you can see, they put people in jail that need to be there. So they do a phenomenal job for us. Our corrections in, boys are meaner than girls, basically, is what this says. But that's, as you can see for the last several years, that has been the standard. So. Our central dispatch, which is housed in the new 911 building that we've been down there for several years, Now, when you look at these 911 calls, these are all 911 calls. This includes fire, medical, and police. So there has been a 66% increase in the last, 4 or 5 years in 911 calls to our center. And as to why, everybody has a cell phone, so if they see something, they say something, and they call somewhere. And this is what we're seeing. In addition to what all we do on patrol or administrative side, these are some of the jobs that, in addition to, some of our officers, for example, our SWAT, we don't have a full-time SWAT team. They're called a part-time SWAT team because they have other responsibilities. They answer calls daily, and so we set aside training for them because we have 12 officers that are dedicated SWAT officers. Special Weapons and Tactics is what that stands for. Now, our crime analyst, he's full-time. That's his whole job. Vice Narcotics, again, is full-time. That's what they dedicate themselves to. We have an officer assigned to our 2nd Judicial Drug Task Force, and we also have an officer assigned to the Drug Enforcement Agency out of Johnson City as a detachment for the city. So we help them, but it's a statewide coverage. It's just housed in Johnson City, but they work for us. Our SROs, school resource officers, we have 4 full-time officers, and then we have 4 SROs that are limited services. They were former full-time officers. They have since retired, but they have chosen to come back, and they serve us in our school system. Our traffic unit are full-time. They work a lot of wrecks, and most of our traffic enforcement. Our EOD, our bomb techs, they are part-time. They have federal required training that they must accomplish each month, and so they spend a lot of time at the range blowing up things. They love that. But parking enforcement is full-time. Search and rescue, we've kind of bent away from search and rescue because that really falls under the purview of the fire department. They're really good at it. So we have, over a course of time, we have dedicated our what we used to call search and rescue to our drone pilots. We have two factions of drone pilots, a team of 4 per team. And if you were out at Fun Fest at any point in time, and you may have saw the drone flying above, that was coming from one of our teams. We're looking at expensing some money to get a drone that is allocated towards internal searches of buildings alone. It's a pretty neat toy, if you will. You just toss it in the building and it can go airborne. And so they're really excited about that possibility. Our communications maintenance, that's the guys down on industry that keep our radios talking to each other, which is a full-time job. Our power shift, for years we used to operate on 4 main shifts, A, B, and C, and D. And what we were seeing is in between the shift changes, we worked from 6:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., 6:30 p. to 6:30 a. What we were seeing is that the interchange between AM and PM, the PM shift would come on board from an overlap of calls that had occurred at the going home time. So they were coming out of the gate already 10 to 15 calls behind. And when you start out the day 10, 15 calls behind, you never get caught up. So that was starting to wear on them. So what we did was create a power shift to where it's a total of 8 guys that kind of function as a stand in the gap faction, if you will. And so that kind of keeps the heat from the oncoming shift at 6:30 from being swallowed up and running out of the gate, being behind those numbers. Our records division is full-time. Our bicycle patrol is part-time. You may have seen some of those during Fun Fest. Our evidence is full-time. It's a full-time job. Those guys do an exceptional job of keeping up with stuff because That is a critical point in any kind of criminal investigation, because that's the chain of custody. And if it's messed up in the system, that's the first thing an attorney's going to attack is Officer A didn't assign it to Officer B, and then now there's an issue. So that's a critical junction in the criminal investigation process. Our canine, we have a total of 4 dogs that we utilize. 3 are drug sniffing as well as patrol trained, and 1 is bomb certified. Our PIO, our Public Information Officer, Tom Patton, does a phenomenal job pushing out information from the police department to the public. And so it's, he does an exceptional job, very well spoken, very articulate, and anytime you see a camera rolling, typically you'll see Tom in front of it, and does an extraordinary job. And last and certainly not least is our Professional Standards Unit. And again, this houses our training, our accreditation, and PIO is under the Professional Standards Unit, so they are active all the time. They're the ones in charge of background investigations, so there's a lot of boots on the ground for that unit right there. This is where we used to be. A lot of black and white pictures, and I'm not going to say that Chief Addington would remember some of those. Yeah, you might be in one of them. Okay, all right. But a lot of black and white. We have come a long way, baby. Come a long ways. And here's where we are now. As you can see, the dog training and making arrests and investigations, and the downtown flood several years ago. You better knew how to swim at that point. And our EOD in the top right-hand corner. And here's top left corner is some of our SWAT doing their training, and again, some more investigations. Traffic collision, a consensual encounter with at the time, Sergeant Height, and some members of our staff that received some awards for traffic safety in the middle. And again, just a continuation. This is part of SWAT training. They're doing what's called a downed officer rescue. The scenario is an officer gets shot. They have to go in and retrieve that officer. And so they're doing it while running hot, and that means with your weapons drawn and out. A raid in the middle, and just some more active. And this is the evidence room. This is what they have to keep up with daily. And if you didn't drink by the time you left that, you probably would. So do a phenomenal job. Phenomenal job. Obviously, I wanted to leave time for some questions I'm sure you may have, and I'll certainly entertain those. And does anybody have any questions? Yes?